Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Who's more important for the Thunder? Is it Russell Westbrook or Kevin Durant? Plus, Donald Sterling says he will fight to keep the Clippers. So what does that mean for the NBA? And Sean Lee tears his ACL. How big of a deal is this for the Cowboys season? All that and more coming up on the First Take podcast, which starts right now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Take. Skip Bayless, Kerry Champion in studio. Stephen A. Smith in New York City. Good morning.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
I cannot use that word good in front of morning, not this morning.
Well,
I know.
It's just a morning.
it's just a morning.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that in just a moment.
Yeah.
Coming up on the show today, Mark Cuban says he doesn't know how he will vote when the owners get together on June 3rd to terminate Donald Sterling's ownership of the Clippers. Are you surprised is the question. We will discuss that. Plus, before the season even begins, the Cowboys are dealing with a loss. Again, we will discuss that. But now let's talk about why it's just morning and not good morning for Mr. Bayless. The Thunder beat the Spurs to even the series 2-2. Led by Russell Westbrook, who had 40 points, 10 assists, and 5 steals in OKC's 105-92 victory. The Spurs this time around were outplayed and outcoached. Popovich had seen enough. He benched his starters midway through the third quarter.
Did you consider bringing back your starters, and if not, why not?
No, because I didn't see any sense in it. We didn't play smart on a consistent basis. All of a sudden, we were going to see if Serge could block a shot or something. And I thought about passing a picture out on the bench. They know who Serge was, but really unwise basketball all of a sudden. It's got nothing to do with adjustments. It's about playing smarter and harder for more consistent minutes.
Pop, you went deep to the bench midway through the third quarter. What was your thought process at that point?
Thursday.
Pop being Pop. Let's see, on a scale of 1 to 10, Skip Bayless, how much faith do you have in your Spurs to win the series?
Stephen A. Smith, I cannot tell a lie. For 10 years on this show, I have been a Spurs supporter, but I am no blindly loyal fan. I am a realist. On a scale of 1 to 10, my faith is now plunged to a 1. I have a 1 left in faith for these Spurs to win this series. I will stick with my pre-series prediction that the Spurs will win in 7 games in a close 7th game in San Antonio, a very close 7th game. But at this point, after what I saw last night and in Game 3, I would not bet a nickel on it. And I must tell you, I will be surprised. I might even go to I will be shocked if the Spurs now rebound to win this series. Because once again last night, Stephen A., I saw a team that was overmatched and demoralized against an Oklahoma City team that with Serge Ibaka has now won all 6 of the games they have played against Ibaka this year. And my problem is none of those 6 games have even been competitive. And I must say, last night, and I'm just being honest with you, I thought that game effectively ended when the Oklahoma City Thunder jumped up 34-24 after Westbrook stole the ball from Bellinelli. I don't know if we have this play. And Serge Ibaka got a break dunk out of it to give them a 10-point lead. I told Ernestine, and she will text you and attest to this, at that moment, this game is over. And I told her at this moment, these Spurs are in trouble to win this series. Pop didn't throw in the towel until 5:33 remained in the third quarter. But think about that. His best players had fallen behind by 25 points in a game that I told you yesterday, Mr. Smith, that they at least had to, for psychological purposes, be competitive in for 4 quarters. 5:33. He didn't just put in the second string. He put in the third string because he was playing for Thursday's Game 5. So, Stephen A., now that Ibaka has returned, and you doubted that you wondered how healthy he would look last night, he still looked pretty healthy to me. He changes the whole world for them. Last night, he's such a rim protector, patrolling the paint, that Westbrook and all the perimeter defenders overplayed and suffocated, gambled and suffocated the Spurs shooters on the perimeter. They look hapless on offense now, and obviously once Durant and Westbrook get going and the threat of Ibaka stepping out off the pick and roll and making jump shots, it was a parade to the rim and the foul line. Coach Herman Edwards asked me in the hall coming in here, why don't they ever knock Westbrook down? And I said, Coach, they've never played that way. It's not San Antonio style. I didn't see any pushback. I didn't see much fight in the Spurs last night. And I must tell you, I don't expect to see a whole lot of fight in them in Game 5. This is way worse than it was in 2012, because even in 2012 in Game 4 in Oklahoma City, they were very competitive down to the last drop. Not this time. It has reversed itself dramatically and dangerously to the point my faith remains barely at a 1.
Skip Bayless, I don't blame you. My condolences to you. Your Spurs are in a world of trouble. There is no doubt. But I'm not going to go to the 1. I'll say it's more like a 3. And the reason why is because I still believe the winner of Game 5 wins this series. And it's on San Antonio's home court. And they are exceptional at making adjustments and adapting to difficult times. Not against Oklahoma City, against everybody else, but they're going to have to figure out a way to do it against Oklahoma City. There is no doubt about that. Russell Westbrook, I've said it on many occasions, he is unstoppable, and he may be the greatest athletic point guard that we have ever seen.
Yep.
Steve Kerr was making the point last night that next after LeBron James, Russell Westbrook is number 2 as the most athletic dude in the NBA. A healthy Derrick Rose would have been in that conversation, but he's not because he's been injured. And that leaves us with Russell Westbrook, who was flat out unstoppable. And we have now discovered, not that we didn't know this before, but it has been cemented that Tony Parker's kryptonite is Russell Westbrook. Because Russell Westbrook being on that floor, being in constant attack mode, being the pit bull that he is, just seems to be a bit too much for Tony Parker. And obviously when Tony Parker is a bit thrown off track, everything is affected by the San Antonio Spurs. Then you also have something that we have to take time to give Scott Brooks a load of credit here. Not just starting Reggie Jackson, not just playing Jeremy Lamb a lot and getting his energy, at least on the defensive end of the floor, when Reggie Jackson hurt his ankle, but also making sure to have Ibaka in the game at times with Steven Adams, because the Spurs don't have an answer for that. Tim Duncan and Thiago Splitter apparently are not an answer for that. And Kawhi Leonard, over the last 3 games, has been a virtual no-show. This is the future of the franchise. A guy that we all praise as being incredibly gifted, waiting for the baton to be to be handed to him. And he seems ill-equipped to handle it. 3 for 9 shooting, 10 points. That's anemic, especially when you're allowing Kevin Durant to shoot 50% from the field and drop 31 on you without a single turnover in 41 minutes. Where is Kawhi Leonard? Listen, we can look at father time, we can look at age and attrition or what have you, but in the end, Tim Duncan is Tim Duncan. You know, he needs help. And Thiago Splitter's not going to give it to him.
Thank you.
And Kawhi Leonard was supposed to. Kawhi Leonard was supposed to. So I'm looking at this right now, and the reason why I still hold out hope is because, Skip, again, whether it was last night or whether it's the games remaining, I've got to see Ibaka last to believe it. Remember, I would have picked OKC to win this series if Serge Ibaka were healthy. He wasn't. He didn't play in the first 2 games, which is why I went with San Antonio. He's been back the last 2. I don't know how long he can last, even though I don't know why I'm feeling that way, because the man has played over 30 minutes in both games that he's been back. But I'm still thinking that he's going to be limited somewhat, and they are an entirely different team on the road. But the combination of Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green being virtual no-shows in Oklahoma City is just as profound as Tony Parker getting schooled by Russell Westbrook. And in the end, it comes down to this for me. Game 5 will decide this series. Whoever wins it wins the series. That's what I believe.
Okay. Again, I'm trying to be a realist here. I need some evidence not about Ibaka maybe or maybe not being right physically. I need some tangible basketball evidence off what you saw in Game 3 and or Game 4 that my Spurs can even compete in Game 5. Because I'm just being honest.
No.
I don't see it. I don't see it.
No, you're right. You're right. I haven't seen a thing in Games 3 and 4, but I did see things in Games 1 and 2
sure.
with rims and an environment that San Antonio is very familiar with that will help them when they're on their home court. I don't expect Danny Green to be this absent. I don't expect Kawhi Leonard to be this absent on their home floor. Okay. And that is why I give them a better chance than you do.
I hear you. But what happened against Miami in the finals last year? Danny Green and Kawhi were at their best at Miami, to me. At Miami. And again, we get back to our rock, paper, scissors. I'm with you on this, and I've been this way all year. I believe more than ever San Antonio could beat Miami in this year's finals, but I do not think that Oklahoma City poses a good matchup for San Antonio. It's a bad matchup, so it's rock, paper, scissors. Do I think that the Thunder can beat the Heat in the finals? I'm starting to come around a little bit, but I still think the Heat would have the advantage if it's Heat-Thunder in the finals. So my point is, the Spurs play completely differently against the Heat and did last year. Danny Green was great on the road last year, so I don't know why it's different in that building. They've now lost, 9 in a row in Oklahoma City. They're demoralized. They've lost all their confidence. And really, Stephen A., is there a better front-running team in the NBA than the Oklahoma City Thunder? Once they smell a little bit of your blood, you're dead. Because they just go crazy. And now they're smelling nothing but San Antonio blood going back to San Antonio, which is exactly the way it was in 2012. The Spurs have lost all faith in everything they do. They look inept on offense because they're getting suffocated on the perimeter because Ibaka's back there to protect the rim. So am I going to take anything and put it in the bank off the third team last night? I'm talking about the third team, Aaron Baines, Matt Bonner, Corey Joseph, cutting the lead from 27 down to 11. Am I going to hang my hat on that, my Spurs hat on that? I do have a Spurs hat.
You do have a Spurs hat.
Am I going to hang my Spurs hat on that for Game 5? No, please. Oklahoma City simply took its foot off the gas, which is why Corey Joseph dunked on Ibaka. He posterized him. Well, because Serge wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
It was a surprise attack. No, it was.
OKC, Skip.
Yeah.
OKC are great front runners on their home court. They still have to go to San Antonio. Whoever wins Game 5 wins the series.
Yes, all right. Winner of Game 5 of a tied best-of-7 series goes on to win 82%.
Wait, I got to hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah, he's giving it to him.
Are you picking Oklahoma City or San Antonio to win Game 5?
I'm picking San Antonio to win Game 5.
Wow. So you still got San Antonio.
He has some faith. More
Next
than
question.
you. More than you.
I'm not. I'm just, listen. There's nothing to talk about if I believe Serge Ibaka was healthy, I'd have never picked San Antonio. But I don't believe it's going to last. That's why I'm sticking with San Antonio.
Have some faith, Skip Bayless. Last night, the MVP of the season had 31 points and 5 assists. He's also averaging, folks, 29 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists during the playoffs. His partner, that Russell Westbrook guy, 40 points, 10 assists, 5 steals, averaging 27 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds throughout the playoffs. Stephen A., from what you've seen so far, in your opinion, who do you think is the most important player for Oklahoma City?
I'm always going to say Kevin Durant. I understand, what a pit bull Russell Westbrook is. I saw how much they struggled without Serge Ibaka, but that's against San Antonio. You have to remember, we're asking a question. We're not basing it just on this series. This is a very generic and broad question, which includes the 82 regular season games, the postseason, regardless of matchups. And I'm saying on most nights, it's Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is the model of consistency. As they called him last night, he is a professional scorer. He's a scoring machine, the likes of which we haven't seen maybe ever. When you consider that he's 6'10", 6'11", a 7'6" wingspan, can pull up from 30, can handle the rock, can dribble, dribble drive penetration, can create his own shot off the dribble, can take you inside or outside off the dribble. This dude is the most lethal scorer. I mean, again, you don't ever want to sit there and talk about with the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants of the world, as lethal as they are. But I don't put LeBron in that category because LeBron never had this kind of a stroke from the perimeter, and neither did MJ. I believe that in the end, assuming that he continues to play for years to come, doesn't get injured or something like that, I believe that Kevin Durant will go down as the NBA's all-time leading scorer, probably eclipsing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the league's all-time leading scorer and the greatest scorer in NBA history. He is that lethal. Russell Westbrook was out of his mind last night. He dropped 40 points. But we're making a big deal out of it because you know something? It was an aberration. As great as he is as an athlete and a player, it was an aberration. We are glossing over the 31 points that Kevin Durant put up because you know what? He is so gifted offensively. We literally look at him dropping 30 and we shrug our shoulders and say, so what? That's typical Kevin Durant. I know how valuable of a defensive presence Serge Ibaka is. He's big time. And I've been raving about Russell Westbrook for years. He's big time. But neither of them are KD, Kevin Durant, the reigning league MVP. This dude is a scorer unlike anything we have ever seen before, period.
I agree with some of the points you made about Kevin Durant. I do not agree with your conclusion. If we're talking about importance to the Thunder, I got to tell you, I rank Russell and Ibaka above Kevin Durant, even though he won the MVP this year. I've said all year, I've come to the conclusion that on the Thunder, the player with the strongest intangibles, with the most fearless clutch guts, is Russell Westbrook. I do think when push comes to shove, they lean on him to start their fire or restart their fire, and to take some of the biggest game-turning shots and make some of the biggest game-turning steals and plays on the break. And Stephen A. Smith, even though I make that case, from what I just saw in games 1 and 2 versus 3 and 4, are we sure we haven't slightly overrated the dynamic duo that is Westbrook and Durant? Seriously. Without Ibaka in games 1 and 2, albeit in San Antonio, where I'm not as high on the Spurs as you are because I've seen them struggle at home more often than they've struggled on the road. But in games 1 and 2, you tell me, they had Russell Westbrook healthy, they had Kevin Durant healthy, and they looked overmatched. They lost the first game by 17 and the second game by 35. Those are two of the top 5 players in the league, and they got blown off the floor, albeit in San Antonio. Then Ibaka returns, and all of a sudden, everything changes. It's like that, what's that Mio flavor enhancer commercial, you know that one? Where they keep changing guys?
Oh, yeah.
And the guy says, it changes everything.
Everything's
well, it does.
Yeah.
Ibaka changes everything on offense and defense. Seriously. Everything changes. All of a sudden, Russell can gamble, suffocate on defense, overplay the pick and roll, and he starts stealing. What did he get? 5 steals last night because Ibaka's back there. Did you see any of that in San Antonio without Ibaka? I didn't see any of it. I'm sorry. I think, and again, I've made this case before, MJ, Pippen, they didn't have an Ibaka. LeBron, D-Wade, they don't have an Ibaka. They do okay. I'm just making a case. Ibaka is way more valuable.
Well, he is way more valuable. That's way more valuable than you initially believed. I've been talking about Ibaka, but let's understand something here that's very, very important. I'm going to go a little old school on you, Skip, not too much. I'm going to go back to my boy Allen Iverson. You remember how much you loved AI, how he had the heart of a lion,
yeah,
and he went after folks? There was but so much he could do. And then you saw guys around him, the Eric Snows, the George Lynches of the world, the Tyrone Hills, as Larry Brown and Billy King built this team. Even though Dikembe Mutombo ultimately was acquired and they went to the finals, if you remember, during the season, they were on an epic run with Theo Ratliff in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, they ultimately traded Theo Ratliff to acquire Dikembe Mutombo, but Theo Ratliff is not a name that sings out on anybody. He's going to no one's Hall of Fame or anything like that. But in 2000, he was Serge Ibaka. When you came into the paint area, Theo Ratliff was a SWAT master. It changed everything for the Philadelphia 76ers. But Allen Iverson still was Allen Iverson. So you can be great. You can be prolific. You can have all of these things going for you. But if you don't have a stopper on the defensive side of the ball, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be incredibly problematic for you unless as a team you're just superior. When you had, even though there was no epic shot blockers on the Lakers with Showtime, they had an incredible team. Even though the Chicago Bulls, with their three-headed monster with Cartwright and Scott King and all of these, well, Stacey King rather, and all of these boys, Jordan and Pippen could defend you 94 feet, and they wreak havoc that way, as well as Jordan doing damage on the offensive end. All I'm saying is that's atypical stuff. Typically, you need somebody defensively to stop things. And I'm telling you that even though Serge Ibaka's that guy, without him doesn't take away from the greatness of a Durant and what we see. It's just that it's not enough because you got to be able to stop people too. People can't have this attitude. They can score on you at will, because if that's the case, now they're just going to key on you defensively from time to time. If they just get a few stops, they can get on a run because you can't stop them. That was the problem with Oklahoma City in games 1 and 2. Since Ibaka has arrived, the Spurs have thrown more pump fakes than anybody I've seen in NBA history, okay? It's ridiculous how many pump fakes they're throwing because Ibaka's down there. But it doesn't take away from what Durant brings to you. And that's all I'm saying about that.
So, quickly, how do you explain what happened in games 1 and 2 to the dynamic duo that are Westbrook and Durant?
The Spurs are an elite team. And when you don't have somebody to stop them offensively, nobody's going to beat them. You have to be able to neutralize them on the defensive end of the floor. Otherwise, the momentum they'll build offensively is just going to be too much for you to overcome because they share the basketball. Everybody gets involved and they pummel you. But when you can stop them offensively, it changes the complexion of everything they do because it gets them rattled and they start looking at each other about why are we not as efficient as we're accustomed to being. That's what the issue is. Sometimes the best offense is a great defense.
A smirk.
He changes everything.
He does. You leave it with that for you? Quickly.
For your Spurs.
Embattled Los Angeles Clippers owner Donald Sterling Tuesday vowed to fight the NBA's attempt to terminate his ownership. Sterling had until midnight Tuesday to respond in writing from his attorney. And this is what he had to say. So in reality, Mr. Sterling is being banned for life, fined $2.5 million, and stripped of his ownership for a purely private conversation with his lover that he did not know was being recorded and that he never intended to see the light of day. We do not believe a court in the United States of America will enforce the draconian penalties imposed on Mr. Sterling in these circumstances. And indeed, we believe that preservation of Mr. Sterling's constitutional rights require that these sham proceedings be terminated in Mr. Sterling's favor. Well, he will be allowed to make his case June 3rd in person when the other 29 owners will take a vote on whether to force the sale of the team. According to his wife, a strange wife that is, Shelley Sterling, Donald Sterling has given her authority to sell the team. Stephen A., all that being said, we caught folks up. What's your take on this?
It's sad, but very, very predictable. You knew ultimately he would be feisty enough to put up a fight. It was pretty hard to believe that he was just going to go away quietly. We all know this. All you had to do was watch his CNN interview with Anderson Cooper and saw how he elected to attack Magic Johnson to put things in its proper perspective. But in the end, I'll give the lawyer credit. Very provocative language, attention grabbing. And the kind of thing that, you know, he's going to try to employ, not just in a court of law, but in a court of public opinion, in an effort to sway things in his client's favor, that of Donald Sterling. It won't work. In reality, here's the bottom line. The NBA Constitution is something that the owners sign on to. It's not a matter of whether the NBA Constitution is bigger than the U.S. Constitution. There is no comparison, obviously. But the U.S. Constitution allows there to be an NBA Constitution. It allows parties to reach an agreement with one another upon which both sides have to abide by. And if Donald Sterling, as a league owner, signed those papers and those documents that alluded to impugning and sullying the integrity of the NBA brand, and as a result of that, you can be out, pushed out, because your association with that brand is detrimental to that brand, then it is what it is. If they were trying to confiscate the team from him and not give him any money or anything like that, all right, well, then that would be different. But Skip Bayless, in my mind, it's tantamount to being a member of a country club. If the country club no longer wants you as a part of its club and it's willing to give you your money back, or at least, or particularly at a significant profit, then you don't have a right to sit there and tell the club you ain't leaving. I don't give a damn what you say. I'm not going anywhere. I insist upon being a part of this club. Excuse me, they have their rules and regulations, they have their stipulations, and this is what they do. Years ago, if you recall, with the whole Masters, scandal in terms of women being allowed to be members at Augusta or whatever, the reality of the situation is that it was we abhorred it. We didn't think it was right, but it was perfectly within their right to have an all-male or male-dominated club. Public pressure may have influenced them to some degree, but it was their right to do it. You can't do that under the U.S. Constitution, not in this day and age, not with these laws on the books, but you were still able to do it with your country club. Because in private industry, private corporations, fraternities, etc., you sign on for certain rules and regulations. And Donald Sterling did that. So he can fight all he wants to, but in the end, the Board of Governors are going to convene this Tuesday. 3/4 of the owners, at the very least, will vote him out, and it will be official. He's gone as an owner for the Los Angeles Clippers. Then they could go and fight it in court. But the players are not going to have a problem with it so long as the commissioner did what he did in banning him for life, and the owners followed suit by stripping him of ownership of the Los Angeles Clippers. That's what the players are concerned about. That's what primarily folks in the African-American community and beyond should be concerned about. All of it else is legalese.
Okay, so Donald Sterling needs, 8 votes, if my math is right, to stay afloat in the NBA? And your bottom line off this response from his lawyer to the league is that it will have little to no impact on those potential 8 votes that he needs to stay afloat, correct? Are you still looking for unanimous? Is that your gut feeling? It will be unanimous against him?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it should be. I said that if it's not going to be unanimous, I want names. I want to know who didn't vote for.
Okay.
To vote them out.
Now, before I make my points, remember this one from me from the start. Donald Sterling has demonstrated his racism in his business practices for years and years and years. Well documented.
Right.
Okay? So I am not in any way defending him, but I'm going to try to be objective with what the lawyer wrote to the NBA here. The flashpoint is, to me, and I'm going to read the line, a jealous rant to a lover never intended to be published, to be made public, cannot offend the NBA rules. Okay. This is the only small case I think Donald Sterling can make here. I brought it up the first day we talked about this, the Monday after the tapes became public via TMZ. You remember I said this.
Okay.
This was a jealous lover fighting with his lover. This man clearly, for my take, he is smitten with this woman. He is irrational. He's in love with this woman, crazy in love. Yeah. To the point he's become a crazy old fool.
That's a word for it.
Okay? All right. So given that, I thought in listening to the tape, he was laying it on a little thick about African Americans not being welcome at his games because he was pointing his comment at one Magic Johnson. He was jealous of Magic Johnson. she had posed for a picture and posted said picture with Magic Johnson. So when he's laying it on thick about, I don't want African Americans coming to my games, he's basically saying, even though I'm not trying to defend him, because I think in the big picture he doesn't want that many African Americans coming to his games. But this was pointed mostly at Magic. I don't want you associating with Magic Johnson at my games. He's crazy jealous. Okay, he has some case there as he makes his case to the league on June the 3rd.
Sure.
Okay, then what happened? We already saw some shots taken at the glass houses occupied by others in the league. Does he have any case here? I don't know. I don't think so. But he brought up the point that Kobe Bryant was fined only $100,000 for the gay slur that he uttered while on the bench during a Lakers game. Remember that one? And then he alluded to the fact that the Magic owner, Richard DeVos, is a staunch Christian who has spoken out against gay marriage. Okay, is that apropos? I think it's, given Sterling's behavior, his racist behavior, and his business practices, that's rotten apple to orange. I'm not sure you can combine those two issues, but they will try. They will try. And they're trying to send the message to the owners that Donald Sterling is friendly with, and we're about to talk about one of those in our next topic, Mark Cuban, but he's friendly with many of these guys. He's trying to send the sort of between-the-lines message to all of them.
Like, okay,
you all live in glass houses. How much dirty laundry do you want me to reveal? How far are we going to go? How dirty are we going to go? How below the belt can we go here, right? Well, is it going to scare off any of them, Stephen A. Smith? I don't know. I would doubt it. I would doubt it. But I do think that there's a small case to be made that it was a privately recorded, and in the state of California, illegally recorded conversation made public that was just a lover's quarrel. There's some case to be made there. Your response?
Donald Sterling has not been arrested, put in handcuffs, thrown in prison, deprived of his inalienable rights, or anything of the kind. Donald Sterling is simply being told, we don't want to be associated with you anymore. Take your $1 billion plus in profit and go away.
Okay, time out.
That's the issue
Quick
here.
point. He's also fighting back about the capital gains taxes he would have to pay if forced to sell. And I don't know where his wife falls into this, because now she's supposedly peddling the team for him. I don't know how that works.
Right. But what I'm trying to say to you is those are the kind of things that could be worked out. Whatever money you may think or deem you're missing out on, whoever is going to be the new owner can step in and say, we'll handle that matter. We'll cover that. Okay, it's not a problem. But let's understand that Donald Sterling isn't being treated. I mean, this is not a dude that's being, stripped of his rights and thrown into prison or something. The issue here is we don't want to be associated with you. What right does he have to sit there and say, I insist on being associated with you even if you don't want me to? No. That's the issue here. Now, if there was some criminal issues that this pertained to, the criminal behavior is on the part of whoever sold that tape or V. Stiviano, who secretly taped it. Okay, because she was the spurned lover, because the wife stepped in and was suing her and was saying, well, you know what? It's community property. Whatever he gave to you, half belongs to me. I want this back. And, she got, reportedly, she got upset, and was being a bit vindictive. I don't see Donald Sterling going after her. Maybe if he went after her, he'd have a better case to make. I don't know. But what I do know is this. In the end, what it comes down to is, they simply don't want you as a part of their fraternity anymore. Think about this. You tell me what individual has a right to insist to a private fraternity that I be a part of your fraternity, no matter what you think. Really? To me, it's nonsense. So he can fight. He can fight all he wants to. But in the end, two things need to happen. One of them already have. Adam Silver gave the lifetime ban, and the Board of Governors need to vote him out. Once those two things happen, he can fight until the cows come home. But essentially what you're doing is fighting to be a part of something that wants no part of you.
I'm not as sure as you are about those
The
on the
legalities?
fence. No, the 8 owners who might be. I'm not so sure that we
No,
know.
no, I'm not. No.
Yeah.
Ho, I'm not sure about the 8 owners. I'm pretty sure about the 3/4 vote.
Okay.
But do I believe there could potentially be some
Yeah.
holdouts? Absolutely.
I do.
My point is, I want to know who they are.
We've got to go through due process. If we want this to play out and we want this to be done right, I trust Adam Silver and his staff to go through the exact process that needs to take place. And I'm going to trust Adam in the process, and I'll make a decision then. You know, at Inc., I told people that I'd already decided, and that was more just to get all the questions stopped. I couldn't answer them, and I didn't want them to continue. But I don't know how I'm going to vote. I'm going to let the process go through. But again, I trust Adam and his staff to do it the right way in accordance with our bylaws, our Constitution, and the law.
Mark Cuban has been very honest about the gray area of trying to terminate Donald Sterling's ownership of the Clippers. He said from the beginning it was, quote, a slippery slope, and now he's on the record saying he does not know how he will vote. So we're putting Mark Cuban on the hook. Stephen A., are you surprised that he said this?
I can't say I'm too surprised simply because of the position that he's taken from day one. He's been front and center talking about how it was a slippery slope from day one. So there's no inconsistency, nor is there any hypocrisy in his statements. He's been consistent with his position. But I would say this, it wouldn't be wise. It wouldn't be wise for any owner to be on the record as voting to keep Donald Sterling in, because you have an abundance of players. Obviously, the league is anywhere from 76 to 80% black. I believe the latest number was at 76%. And you have a whole bunch of African-American players, particularly LeBron James, who has been outspoken. Skip, I'm going to say this again. I was in Brooklyn the night that Donald Sterling's interview with Anderson Cooper aired. The Miami Heat was playing the Brooklyn Nets, and Spike Lee and myself were standing at midcourt, and LeBron James walked over to say hello, had a big smile on his face. Everything was cool. And he was just like this, just chilling out, getting ready to go to the layup line. And then the second Spike Lee said, "Did you see Donald Sterling's interview with Anderson Cooper?" LeBron went like this. What did he say? And his attitude is like that every time this man's name comes up. LeBron is the best player in the world. He is a leader and an ambassador for the NBA. More importantly, he is somebody who has conducted himself in an exemplary fashion throughout his entire career. This is a dude that was considered the chosen one coming out of high school, Skip. And despite an illustrious career that has brought him wealth and celebrity beyond his wildest imagination, the only negative thing ever associated with this guy in his NBA career was the quote-unquote decision, which is nothing in the grand scheme of life. He is not just the best player in the world. He is somebody that is a leader to a lot of guys because of how he conducts himself, how he handles his business, and how he preaches about the importance of other guys handling their business. And I'm not acting like this is going to be some guy that's going to be out there holding some protest sign or anything like that. I'm simply saying to you that LeBron James on many occasions has already sent the message that Donald Sterling has got to go. He has been quoted saying the same thing. Chris Paul, quietly as president of the Players Association and a member of the Clippers, feels the exact same way, along with practically every player I have spoken to. And if there is an owner that is going to be on the record in favor of Donald Sterling remaining a part of the NBA, good luck with them trying to get some players to play for them. And let me also say this. If it's Mark Cuban, and I'm a fan of Mark Cuban, and you know, I'm on the record. I defended him last week. I didn't feel he said anything wrong. But let me tell you something. He doesn't vote Donald Sterling out. I'm here to tell you, the best thing he can do to keep his franchise afloat for years to come is to make sure the next move he needs to make is go and sign Rick Carlisle to a long-term extension. Because Rick Carlisle could coach his butt off. You can give him average players, and he can max that out, as he showed us in his 7-game series against the San Antonio Spurs. I'm not saying no one's going to come play because everybody wants to make their money, etc. But I'm telling you, in terms of you attracting marquee dudes in the future, Donald Sterling hit folks in a way that I'm just telling you as a black man, I've heard a lot of things. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of things. But what Donald Sterling said was straight off the plantation. It runs too deep. You cannot be an owner associated with the NBA on the books publicly saying he should stay on board. It will be a problem.
Right. So it certainly sounds like, after all you just said, that you were very surprised and extremely disappointed in Mark Cuban's reaction on TNT last night.
I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed. But I'm not surprised because his position has been there from day one. But I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed because Mark Cuban is on the record. He not basically, literally, he said Donald Sterling's a racist. That's what he said. This is what Mark Cuban said. If you're on the record saying this about Donald Sterling, the owner, then why vote to keep him on when you have every right to vote him out?
Okay, I want to be again clear about this. I am very against the position Mark Cuban has taken from the start. But he is also taking more of a legal position. The slippery slope comment was about Donald Sterling's constitutional rights here. There are NBA bylaw rights, and there are larger American rights, constitutional rights. And then he was voicing slippery slope concerns that if we call Donald Sterling on our carpet, then we might have to start calling this owner and that owner and then maybe this owner on the carpet. Yeah. And we may have to have a little tribunal for all these guys and a June 3rd for everybody where we say, well, wait a second, he said this. How do we feel about that? Maybe we should have a vote about owner B, C, and D. Yeah, right? Sure. Right? Okay.
Tribunal is a good word.
Yeah, it would be a tribunal. Yeah. So what did I say last week? And it got a little lost in the shuffle of what was going on. It wasn't a shuffle. It was just the hysteria, as it should have been, surrounding the flashpoint of Mark Cuban's interview. Who was it with? Was it Inc?
Inc.
Yeah.
Inc.
Okay.
Magazine.
The Inc. interview last week that we showed over and over again, just to make sure we got the context of it. We all fixated on the, what I thought, completely out of bounds, hoodie comment. So we got off track of the larger issue. I thought Mark Cuban, and I said it many times on the show, was trying to lay the groundwork for all of us to sit back and say, you know, Donald Sterling deserves a little break here because we all have our prejudices. We have it ingrained. We have it deep in our psyches that if we see a man walking toward us in a hoodie, or we see a white man with the tattoos and the bald head, blah, blah, blah. We know all the comments. But he was trying to say, we all think this way and we all think that way. Again, I thought in some big picture defense of his friend Donald Sterling. That's just me. And I kept raising the issue, and we kept getting back to the hoodie question, rightfully so. But again, in the NBA context, Mark Cuban was saying, time out. And then last night on TNT he was saying, oh, I know I said originally, because I just wanted to get everybody off my back, you know, that I know how I'm going to vote. I don't know how I'm paraphrasing Mark, but he said, I don't know how I'm going to vote because we need to let due process run its course. It's like America, and we have to use American principles within the confines of our fraternity to give him a fair trial. So Mark's saying, I'm open to whatever I hear at the trial, whatever I hear back from Donald Sterling and his lawyers. And Stephen A. Smith is saying, no, you can't do that. You already said the man's a racist. It's over. You have to vote no. And Mark Cuban's digging in, and I don't know if he's going to influence 6 or 7 or 8 other voters, but he might. He might be trying to.
People may already feel that way.
Skip. The legal ramifications associated with this is a concern for the NBA. Now, I know that the Board of Governors make up the NBA because they own each of the 30 teams. But essentially, it really doesn't have much to do with them beyond voting Donald Sterling out. If Mark Cuban was worried about being directly sued by Donald Sterling, I can understand his trepidation. But considering the fact that that's not the case, and you combine that with the fact that you're on the record calling him a racist yourself, Mark Cuban, then it's simply a question of this. In the eyes of the players and those from our disenfranchised communities, and Magic Johnson as well, it's a simple question of this. Do you think it's good for us to have this guy as a part of our fraternity? Period. Stop it. All of this stuff about the U.S. Constitution, usurping the NBA Constitution. Forget all that legal mumbo-jumbo. That's the kind of stuff that you want to try to get over to the players, but it ain't going to fly. The bottom line is, does this guy need to be a part of your fraternity or not? Do you feel that way? Because it's not like he's waiting at your doorstep, Mark Cuban, to take money out your pocket. So if you're not directly and personally affected by this, then it's a simple matter of, do you think it's good for him to be a part of the NBA fraternity or not? We always try to get slick and make things so much more complicated than it actually is. It is not. We understand there was an illegal recording. We understand that, you know what, Donald Sterling in that regard got screwed over. We get that. We understand it. We understand it totally. But that doesn't negate what you said. It doesn't negate that it's indicative of the behavior you spent decades exhibiting and in a lot of people's eyes got away with. So now that the cat's out the bag and Pandora's box has been opened and you have been exposed for being who you are, don't come to us with U.S. Constitution and legal mumbo-jumbo and all of this other stuff. It's a simple question for Mark Cuban and the rest of the owners. Is it good for this guy to be a part of this NBA fraternity or not? That's all. That's all.
You good with that?
I'm good.
The 2014 season is already off to a rough start for America's team. Cowboys linebacker and defensive leader Sean Lee was told he has a torn left ACL and is expected to miss the entire season. A source tells our Ed Werder Lee injured his knee during the team's first OTA workout on Tuesday. Now, this is a big loss, but we asked that question, how big of a loss is it really to the Cowboys? To help us further the discussion is our analyst, NFL analyst, Jerome Bettis. Thank you for being here. I'll get that out. But I'm giving it to Bayless first, because this is his team, so he is the expert.
Thank you, champion.
You got it.
As a lifelong Cowboy fan, I view it as a huge loss because they don't have much behind him at an inside or middle linebacker. But I got to tell you, I wasn't at all surprised by this because it seems like ever since Sean Lee was drafted, he's been hurt more than he's been on the field. So, again, the joke, and this is a sad joke, is on Jerry Jones. Just last August, they gave him 6 more years with $16 million more guaranteed. And I'm thinking at that time, he's certainly worth that money if he's upright. And he's rarely upright. Because I go back to Penn State, and I'm going to ask you about players that you've known in your life. Sean Lee tore his ACL at Penn State during spring ball non-contact. Okay? It was just defective. He almost tore it. He partially tore it again in Dallas. Now he's had a wrist, a neck, a toe, a hamstring. All these injuries have kept him out for long periods of time. So how can I count on or trust Sean Lee? I never could. You know, Jerome, you are a blessed man because you didn't have any injuries to speak of except the normal wear and tear. But you didn't have any shoulders or any knees. Right. Some guys just can't stay healthy. I don't know why. God only knows about this because they were born injury-riddled. They were an injury risk from birth where something's going to go, and you've known players like this who just couldn't stay on the football field for whatever reason. So that's Sean Lee to me. Yeah. So I can't say, oh, all is lost, right? Yes. Because it seemed like it was lost when they gave him 6 more years. Right?
Yeah, and NFL players, we call them porcelain dolls because, you know, you hit them one time, something happens, and they fall apart. But I will say this. The Cowboys understood what they had, so I believe there's a stipulation in the contract, $9 million of that.
80%. He was going to have to play 80% of the snaps to get the bulk of it.
So they understood what they were dealing with. The problem is they didn't address it in the draft. And I think you have to address these type of issues with players like this with depth. And that's the problem. They don't have the depth that they need to have at that position. The linebacker position is a key position in any defense. Doesn't matter what defense it is, 4-3, 3-4. You've got to have depth at that position because that's the most physical position. Those guys are hitting every play.
Right.
You've got to have somebody else who can get in there. And right now, they don't have anybody. They just have a bunch of guys behind Sean Lee. And when you do have an injury-prone player, you better have somebody at least average behind him that can spell him and spot him at times. They don't have that.
No. All right, Stephen A.
Well, it's interesting because they drafted this kid Anthony Hitchens out of Iowa in the 4th round, and he was drafted to be their backup. But you would think that because it's Sean Lee and he's had his history of injuries, I mean, he's missed 15 of the last 32 games for crying out loud, you would think that they would cover themselves better. They haven't. And it's typical Jerry Jones. He fell in love. No linebacker has more than the 11 interceptions that he's had over the last 3 seasons, of 9.2 tackles he's averaged per game. You know what, that was ranked 5th in the NFL compared to most. You know how Jerry Jones is. He fell in love with that. The guy's a hard worker. He's dedicated. You listen to the way Jason Garrett speaks about him. You listen to the way Tony Romo speaks about him. You know that he's a character guy in terms of how much he loves the game of football. So if you got those two vouching for you, plus you play effective whenever you're on the field, Jerry Jones is going to fall in love with that as opposed to looking at things as pragmatically as he should and making decisions accordingly. But I look at this, and I'm sad for Lee because obviously, you know, like Skip said, he has been injury prone. The right ACL his senior year in Penn State, the partial tear in the left ACL a couple of years back, the wrist, the neck, and all the toe. All of this stuff is true. Absolutely. But the other side to it is that psychologically, it just shows you something about the Cowboys. And I'm not joking around and I'm not chiding them. I'm being very serious when I say this. You see how quick Tony Romo and Jason Garrett were to come to his defense? Oh, he works so hard. It's so sad, etc., etc. Well, they're right, and we know this. But the problem is that you've got the Romos of the world and the Garretts of the world who rave about individuals that they personally like. And a lot of times that attributes and contributes to Jerry Jones not seeing things as objectively and pragmatically, Skip, Jerome, as he should. Because when you've got your quarterback and your head coach who are just as quick to praise the likability factor that you have with them and how much they just love you to death and you're like a brother to them and all of this other stuff, you know what? If you were playing for Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, and all of those guys, do you hear stuff like that coming out of their mouth? They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. You know, can you play or can't you? That's right. Are you dependable and durable and reliable or are you not? This is the business that we're in. And unfortunately, that contributes to, again, it's one thing to have Sean Lee. It's another thing to give him that contract. And it's also another thing not to have a big-time backup if you're capable of getting one. You know how injury-prone this dude is, and your backup was somebody, his backup was somebody that you acquired in the 4th round? Really? You didn't think that was a level of urgency that you should have considered? Just me, just a thought.
May I please compliment my friend Stephen A. Smith? In the history of this show, this is the first time, as we discussed my Dallas Cowboys, that you made a very fair and deep point about what just happened. You did not ridicule. You did not say accident waiting to happen.
You're proud of
You
him.
did not make jokes about the Dallas Cowboys. You made a really strong, right point. Bill Belichick probably would have said no to Sean Lee going forward. You're dead right about this, and this is exactly the problem this team faces. Invariably, Jerry Jones is going to give him even restricted money going forward. It's still a loss on your salary cap.
Absolutely.
And yet, they fall in love. Sean Lee's a great guy. He is the heart, soul, and brains of that defense. And they love playing with him and for him. But hey, at some point, you got to be cold-blooded and say, I don't know. The stats would show me here as Stephen A. pointed out, you only played about half the last 32 games.
Yeah.
I can't do this.
Can't go with good guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think that's where the problem is with Jerry Jones being owner, GM.
Yep.
And I think that's we're kind of missing the point here, the major point, in that the team isn't built correctly. When you build a team understanding the pieces of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And if you understand that Sean Lee is a vital piece to the puzzle, but he's injury prone or has the ability to be injury prone, then you need to make sure you have circled that area and you identified it and you do something about it. And that's not the only area where there's glaring deficiencies. And so I have to look at Jerry Jones as a GM and say, this is an indictment on you, and this is another reason why you should not be the general manager, because this team is not built correctly. And I think we have to look at that as well.
We also have to stop putting Jerry Jones' feet to the fire all by himself. There's a son that he has named Stephen Jones, whose voice is almost as significant, if not just as significant, as his father, who does a lot to convince his father to make some of these decisions. Why do we keep talking about Jerry Jones and we don't talk about his son, with a beautiful name, by the way, Stephen? I don't understand.
Stephen A. Jones, yeah. I still think Jerry, the buck stops on Jerry's desk still. And I agree with you, Stephen deserves a little bit of shared blame, but in the end, it's Jerry's call. And my bottom line to this discussion is the Dallas Cowboys had the worst defense in the National Football League last year, and it just got a little worse, maybe a whole lot worse.
All right. Cowboy season opener is Sunday, September 7th against the 49ers at Jerry's World, and it's looking bleak already for your America's team. Quickly, we're going to talk some basketball next, so you have to go, Mr. Bettis. But Spurs, Thunder, who you got?
I've got to go with Thunder right now. Baca back it's changed the complexity of that team, so I got to go with the Thunder.
Look at you, moonlighting NBA analyst. Thank you so much for that.
Coming this summer, the 2014 FIFA World Cup from Brazil. Every goal. The shot scores! The USA leads by 2! Every save.
Here's Germany up. Steal. Olsen. Into the box. The shot is stopped.
Every match. Wherever you are this summer, take the FIFA World Cup with you. It's on ESPN Radio and the ESPN Radio app.
We have a series out west, ladies and gentlemen. After building a big first-half lead, the Thunder held off a determined Spurs bench for a 105-92 win last night. It was Game 4. Now, some are being reminded of the 2012 Western Conference Finals, when the Thunder lost their first 2 games in San Antonio before winning 4 straight to win the series. Stephen A. Smith, is this the 2012 West Finals all over again?
We don't know yet. I think we have to see Game 5. It looks that way at the moment, but they still have to go back to San Antonio. But in the end, if Oklahoma City continues on this onslaught and they go in to San Antonio and run the Spurs out of their own building, then it definitely will be a replica of 2012. Because if y'all remember, at that time, the Spurs looked explosive then as well. They looked destined for a championship. Everybody marveled at them and said, you know something? Who's going to beat them? You actually questioned, because LeBron and the Miami Heat had lost to the Dallas Mavericks in the finals the year before. And they were obviously heading back to the finals to try and capture his first world championship. And you found yourself saying, how would they beat these guys? LeBron's never going to get a title. And then Oklahoma City said, you ain't got to worry about that. You don't have to think about that when it comes to the Spurs, because they took care of the Spurs, ran through them over those last 4 games. Based on what we've seen the last 2, it certainly looks like it's aiming in that direction yet again. But there's still a Game 5 and in San Antonio, and that will tell us. But I don't blame anybody for thinking that way, because right now it does look bleak for San Antonio, because their body language is different than it was in 2012, Skip. It actually looks worse. Their body language off of last night looked similar. If you remember, it didn't entirely emulate it, but it looked similar to, you remember years ago when Shaq and Kobe were running the Spurs out of the building in the playoffs. And Jack, there's only one Jack, was sitting there, the noted Laker fan, say, take their heart, take their heart. He was screaming into the camera about what the Lakers would do to San Antonio. And Tim Duncan was on the bench, his head down, looking completely despondent and depressed, while Popovich was sitting next to him, just patting him on the knee and trying to say it's going to be all right. It wasn't quite that bad, but it looked like it was going in that direction based on the body language that I saw from San Antonio last night. So it's going to be real interesting to see how they respond.
I like the analogy you just made. I was there. Was that 2001 for that Western Conference Finals? I think it was 2001.
I'm not sure.
Look,
I'm not sure it was that. I'm not sure it was that.
Off the top of my head here.
I think it might have been. Yeah, I think it might have actually been the year they lost to Detroit in the finals, but they ran through San Antonio to get there. I'm not sure, but I think that was the year. But I think it was later than 2001.
Okay, but I was there covering that series, and I agree with you. It was a sweep, and Shaq just ragdolled Tim Duncan. It just wasn't even. It wasn't a contest. So. Again, so you already admitted you're not going to shame me for looking so bleakly at what's left of this series. Stephen A., right. I'm here to tell you from my heart, cannot tell a lie. To me, this feels already much worse than 2012 felt at that time. And it's mostly because of Ibaka's series-shocking return. It just feels so different with Ibaka now in games 3 and 4. In which my Spurs were not competitive in those two games. I think they know they were not competitive in those two games. And I'm going to remind you, if we go back to the 2012 game, well, let's just look. Last night, I made the case earlier in the show, that game to me was effectively over with 8 minutes left in the second quarter when the home team, Oklahoma City, went up 10 points. It just felt over. San Antonio looked done at that point. And I thought, uh-oh, they're in trouble for Game 5. Now I look back, as I did this morning before the show, at 2012's Game 4, and it was a close game. Down the stretch, they were only down 4, the Spurs, going into the fourth quarter. They stayed down 4 with 4:55 left in the game. And that was the game Ibaka hit 11 out of 11 shots, and they're still hanging in there. It took Durant at his greatest. He scored 16 straight points down the stretch of the fourth quarter, and the score of the fourth quarter alone was 34-32 Oklahoma City. So it was shot for shot, shot for shot. It was a shootout that was in Oklahoma City. Then we go to the pivotal Game 5 in San Antonio in 2012. Ginobili takes a 3 with 5 seconds left to tie the game. And again, the Thunder pulled slightly away to win that game by 5. But then we go to the closeout Game 6 back in Oklahoma City. San Antonio led 37 of the 48 minutes. San Antonio was up 3 going to the fourth quarter. They led the game still with 9:32 left, and they were only down 3 with 3:39 left. So that's the closeout Game 6 in Oklahoma City. From what you saw in Games 3 and 4, can you imagine San Antonio going back to Oklahoma City for a closeout Game 6 and hanging in until 3:39 remains? I'm sorry, I don't have any evidence to say, yes, I can imagine that. I hope you're right about Game 5, because the only way they're going to win is to somehow win Game 5 and then get this thing back to San Antonio for Game 7. Then you just kind of close your eyes and hope somebody gets a hot hand, Manu, Danny Green, Patty Mills, and they hang in and steal it at the end. That's the only case I can make.
I'll tell you this much, the way I feel, there's no way on earth San Antonio wins a Game 6 in Oklahoma City. There's no way. Not with that crowd, and not the way they feed off of that crowd. I don't see that.
I would agree.
San Antonio is going to have to protect its home court.
Yeah, I'm going to say this one last time. I've said it all year long. To me, if Oklahoma City is healthy, the only team that can beat the Thunder is the Thunder. So then the only hope I would have as a Spurs supporter is Russell Westbrook would have one of those nights where he just loses it for whatever reason. He has 9 turnovers, and Durant has 7 turnovers, and they go a combined 2 for 20 from 3, one of those kind of nights. And they have them occasionally. They had them against Memphis. They had one against the Clippers, so then you'd have to hope they beat themselves.
Bayless, you still say Spurs in 7.
I'm hanging in.
Spurs in 7.
Without any evidence.
The Lakers continue to interview candidates for their open head coaching position, including former Laker, you all remember him, Byron Scott. He tells USA Today Sports that his strong relationship with Kobe Bryant makes him the best man for the job. Quote, I think the Kobe relationship is going to play a big part. I think I've got a hand up on the job because of our relationship. We get along extremely well. Kobe knows all about me and what I'm about. He knows that I'm an old school coach who's very demanding on the defensive end and knows that defense and rebounding wins championships. So I think from that point of view, we see eye to eye. Stephen A. Smith, would he be the right coach for the Lakers?
Well, I'm not going to say he's going to be the wrong coach because I think a relationship with Kobe Bryant goes a long way. I think the Lakers organization, I'm on the record saying this, I think that the Lakers organization owes Kobe Bryant to give him what he believes the Lakers need over the final 2 years of his career. I would not feel this way, Skip, if they hadn't messed things up so badly over the last several years and Kobe was just going into the last 2 years of his deal. But because they've allowed egos, they've allowed personal relationships and everything else to get in the way of the franchise's progress, mainly Jim Buss, and Kobe Bryant has had to suffer because of that, considering how he had to carry the load the first year D'Antoni arrived, which ultimately ended up with him being injured and out practically all of last season. I think you owe that to Kobe. However, I'd be remiss in neglecting to point out how bad things were for Byron Scott in Cleveland in terms of their inability to win basketball games, and how a guy by the name of Lionel Hollins was let go by the Memphis Grizzlies despite guiding them to the Western Conference Finals. I can't put Byron Scott and his recent, even though he didn't have the talent and he didn't have the pieces. It's not to say he's going to have them with the Lakers, I can tell you that much. But I can't put Byron Scott ahead of Lionel Hollins. I just can't do that. Now, his relationship with the Lakers, because he's a guy that helped deliver championships for them, matters to some degree. But Jim Buss doesn't seem to care nearly as much about that as he should. And to me, that kind of rubs me the wrong way. And so when I look at it, I say, hey, that's not the ideal environment for Byron Scott to walk into. I don't mind if he gets it because he is a former Laker. He's somebody that cares about their franchise and the success that they could ultimately reap. But at the same time, is he the best man for the job? I can't legitimately say that with a guy like Lionel Hollins waiting out there that just took the Memphis Grizzlies to the Western Conference Finals before he was fired. I can't say that when there's a guy by the name of Jeff Van Gundy that's out there that probably wouldn't mind coaching in L.A. for the right circumstances. That just would be unfair. Can't do it.
This is no disrespect to Lionel Hollins. We had him on the show last year in San Antonio. I love that man, and I do respect him. I respect Jeff Van Gundy, obviously. But I have come to the point where I think Byron Scott would be the perfect man for this job at this moment. I've loved everything he said publicly. I loved it that he, quote-unquote, called out Kobe. He just said in a previous interview, Kobe knows he's going to have to change his game. And I like their clique. I like the respect level that they would have for each other. And, Stephen A., while you point out about what Lionel did with the Memphis Grizzlies, remember, Byron Scott got the Nets to the NBA Finals twice. I think he's a good clique with great players, and obviously Jason Kidd on those two teams was a great player. They didn't have other great players. They had Kenyon Martin, who else? Kerry Kittles, Richard Jefferson. Not all that much except for Jason Kidd, an obvious first ballot lock Hall of Famer. But I think that Byron would work wonders with Kobe at this stage of his career because Byron went through this stage of his career as a Laker. He's an L.A. guy, born and raised. He's a Laker born and raised. Came up through the organization. He gets it. He feels it. He knows Laker Nation. I I think Kerry Champion would like seeing Byron Scott on the sideline. I think it would be a good fit in your mind's eye as a Laker fan, just seeing a part of purple and gold history back. Somebody from the storied, glorious past back on the sideline. So I like all that. I just think, yeah, you're right. Byron didn't do a good job with mediocre or subpar teams. He's not that guy. Right. He's not a turnaround guy. He's not Larry Brown. But I think if you give him Kobe and a little bit of other talent, I think he'd be pretty good.
Well, listen, I'm not here to question whether I don't think that he would be bad. And I certainly don't disagree with you that it appears if you're talking about the Lakers going back to their own. See, my problem is I don't trust Jim Buss. And if I don't trust Jim Buss, then I got to wonder what he's doing when it comes to Byron Scott. I love the fact that Byron Scott has a good relationship with Kobe. I really, really do. And I don't think it needs to go unnoticed that Byron Scott got a raw deal when Lawrence Frank ended up getting that job with the Nets, and he was pushed out of there after guiding them to 2 straight NBA finals. His reputation took a hit because people were questioning his work ethic, which I thought was cruel and unfair. But in the end, what it comes down to is that what this is about? Your relationship with Kobe? It's got to be about more than that, because Jim Buss has really messed up the Lakers over the last several years. If the Lakers are just moving along and being who they are, that's entirely different. If you're in the playoffs, it's entirely different. But considering how bad they've been over the last 2 to 3 years, I'm looking at Byron, and I'm like, can you really steer this ship in the right direction? Will Jim Buss allow you to? I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
That's fair.
I hear where you're coming from.
I'm with you on that. And by the way, Byron made the point in this USA Today interview that we're talking about today that he does not know Jim or Jeannie very well. Just casually knows them, so he's not sure what they think of him. So
or
I'm not sure.
Into.
Or he might. I think he has some idea what he's getting into, and apparently has no fear of it. But again, how much is Kobe involved in the hiring process? It seems like Kupchak, the GM, sometimes indicates not much at all. And then I read other stories that Kobe is behind the scenes pretty closely involved in this process. So I'm sure Kobe is going to carry some weight in which way they go.
All Laker fans, the problem with them is that they're waiting for Phil to walk back in the door, and it's not happening. We got to move past that and look for a new coach. Folks, the Thunder evened their series with the Spurs after a 105-92 win last night. After averaging about 117 points in their first 2 games, the Spurs have been held to under 100 points in these last 2, due in large part to the return of Serge Ibaka. Now the series heads back to San Antonio for Game 5. Here's the big question. How much confidence does one, and I don't know who that one would be, have in the Spurs to win the series? Helping us analyze and break this down is the coach, the player, the man, Avery Johnson. Where you been?
You know, I've been on a little bit of a vacation.
Oh, okay.
And, but I'm back now.
But I'm sure you're keeping in touch with Coach.
It's good to see you, Coach.
Right? Yes, you're right about that.
Okay.
Stephen A. says it's good to see you, Coach.
Hey, Stephen A.
Okay, so help Skip out.
What's going on?
How much confidence you have?
On a scale from 1 to 10? You know, I was at an 8 prior to this series starting, especially with Ibaka being out.
Sure.
I was at an 8, and I think, you know, I talked to Kerry about it even on a radio show, that I thought the Spurs were going to win this series 4-1 prior to Ibaka
fair enough.
being healthy and ready to play. I'm at about a 6 right now. I'm still feeling pretty good.
That's good.
But I'm at a 6. But hold on, Skip. Hold on now. Just, the Spurs, a couple of things. One, they have home court advantage. They have home court advantage, and I really believe that they're going to win Game 5. Things swung. You know, Ibaka comes back. The Spurs go from scoring 66 points in the paint in Game 1 to 36 points in the paint in Game 4. The Oklahoma City had a total of 6 block shots in Game 1 and 2, and they have 18 block shots in games 3 and 4. It's the Ibaka effect. On SportsCenter, I said his name should change from Serge Ibaka to Ibaka Blocks. He's had that much of an impact on this series. The insertion of Reggie Jackson in the lineup, great move, another ball handler. Nobody.
He did hurt his ankle last night.
I think he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Nobody on the planet right now, outside of probably LeBron James, could contain or try to, minimize Westbrook's impact. And I'm with you on this. When Oklahoma City's the most dangerous is when Westbrook is the best player.
Ooh, thank you.
Okay? So I agree with you there. But here, let's talk about the Spurs. First of all, Greg Popovich, Hall of Fame coach. He was my coach, my mentor, unbelievable. I think he's going to make some adjustments, and I haven't talked to him about this, but I think he's going to make a few adjustments in Game 5, potentially with his starting lineup.
Thank you.
Splitter hasn't been effective.
Out.
I think. Yeah. I think he's going to probably insert Diaw into the lineup.
Thank you.
Because and I think possibly maybe Manu in the lineup.
For Danny Green.
And here's the reason why. One, it gets Parker off the ball sometime because, he'll over-dribble sometimes.
Does he?
Gets him off the ball. Also, when Parker's handling the ball, he needs space.
Right.
And Diaw gives him more space. Hopefully, it'll draw Ibaka out of the paint a little bit because Ibaka's just been playing a one-man zone in the paint. And even when he's not blocking shots, he's contesting shots. Ibaka's one of the best pick-and-roll defenders in the NBA. And you got to have somebody that make him pay the price when he's on the defensive end. Look for Pop. The Spurs, don't underestimate the home crowd. I know the Oklahoma City Thunder gets a lot of publicity with their crowd at Chesapeake Arena, but the AT&T, it can get pretty loud.
Well, it better get loud.
Yeah, so just, again, everybody basically held serve on their home court. If you would have told the Spurs after losing Game 6 last year to the Miami Heat in the finals that you would be back in the conference finals with a 3-game series.
Yeah, got to win 2 out of 3.
And you got to win 2 out of 3 at home. Yeah. They would take it.
Okay.
In a heartbeat. Okay.
In a heartbeat.
So you're at a 6, meaning you think they will get this done against Oklahoma.
Well, I picked them. I got to stick with my pick. And prior to the season, I picked them to not only get back to the finals but win it. So just because they've had 2 bad games, I'm not going to jump off ship. But again, Oklahoma City looks like a different team. Even guys like Jeremy Lamb is giving them some contributions off the bench. Adams is a force inside. Caron Butler's, giving them some spotty minutes here and there. But with Reggie Jackson in the lineup, sometime allowing Westbrook to play 2, and then Ibaka effect offensively, but primarily defensively, it's a different team now.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be an entertaining series, but just because they've lost 2 games and I picked them to win the series, I'm not going to jump off the ship.
All right, Stephen A., your take.
Well, there's a reason to be concerned considering the momentum that OKC has, but it can all be derailed if San Antonio handles its business on its home court. Listen to Coach Avery Johnson, however, what really bothers me is that, I want an epic NBA Finals. And I've said it and I've been on the record, Skip, you can validate this for months, that San Antonio could beat Miami.
Yep.
But the problem is they could lose to OKC. And OKC, to me, would lose to Miami. And the reason why I feel that OKC would have trouble with Miami is because of what Coach Avery Johnson just pointed out. Because if Chris Bosh does what he did in Game 4 against Indiana when Miami goes to the finals, and I do mean win, by the way, Chris Bosh is the guy that pulls you guys away, pulls other opposing frontline players away from the basket. And if they could do that, if him and Udonis Haslem can do that, then that neutralizes Serge Ibaka. And then that puts LeBron or KD and Russell Westbrook at the mercy of LeBron and D. Wade and the crew. And that's a problem for me because the styles make fight, styles make matchups. And that's how Miami would offset that. And I bring that up because this is what my concern is. Is there anybody on San Antonio that could pull Serge Ibaka away from the basket? Tim Duncan can hit those line drive jumpers, but you can't depend on it because they're line drive jumpers. Don't give me Thiago Splitter doing it. That ain't gonna happen. I like Bane's big and big, formidable body and what have you. But he's a bench player. We know this. So what you gonna do with Serge? I don't know. It remains to be seen. So we'll see what happens. My concerns are big, but I'm not giving up on the Spurs yet either, because I think that Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green play much better at home than they do on the road, and I think they will in this case as well.
So back to Coach Avery. I do need your help here. I deeply respect, especially your knowledge of this basketball team, the San Antonio Spurs. I am hanging in with my pre-series prediction of Spurs in 7. I said from the start I thought Ibaka would return for Game 3, and right on schedule. Unfortunately for me, he did, and he changed everything. I'm hanging in with Spurs in 7 at home to win a close Game 7, but I saw zero evidence in Games 3 or 4 that I saw in 2012 as they started to unravel and collapse. At least in Game 4 in 2012, they were competitive all the way to the last drop. Last night, they were not competitive. Now I have watched Serge Ibaka play the Spurs 6 times this season, 4 times in the regular, twice, obviously, in the series. They were uncompetitive against Serge Ibaka and company. And he's become, to me, the most important player on the Oklahoma City Thunder, because without him, in Games 1 and 2, man, the Spurs won by 17 and 35. Okay? So tell me what can I hang on to? I already wrote this down before we even came out here. I said Boris Diaw has to start for Splitter, and this is desperate, but I would put Ginobili in for Danny Green in the starting lineup and say, guys, we have to go all or nothing. This is do or die tonight at home. We have to defend our turf with the best players we have. But give me one piece of evidence that you saw in 3 and 4 that would give me any hope as a realist to say, yeah, we got this in Game 5, because I don't see it.
Well, I just think you're going, it's not just the Spurs series in 2012. You're looking at their whole overall body of work. And the Spurs have prided themselves not only on being the big 3 anymore, but the big 4. They're really good when Parker, Ginobili, Duncan, and Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, he's the guy, not Danny Green, but Kawhi Leonard's the guy that not only needs to, play better defense, but give them some scoring. Coming into this season, I was at the Spurs training camp visiting for a couple of days, and Pop talked mainly about unleashing Kawhi Leonard. That on, a lot of nights when they get stuck and stagnant or they're struggling to score, he's the guy that needs to step up and get them 20. He hasn't really been a factor in these last 2 games. But I think just the same way with Scott Brooks, with Ibaka coming in the lineup and also Reggie Jackson, it just ignited everything. Maybe Ginobili and Boris Diaw being in the lineup could fuel it not only for Tony Parker, but for Kawhi Leonard. Give him more space to operate. Then he can get out on the break. And instead of Tony Parker primarily being the only ball handler in the lineup, now you get another ball handler in Ginobili. Another thing, look for Corey Joseph maybe to get a few more minutes.
I don't know about that.
Well, Skip, you look at defensively. No, I'm just saying.
I know he can defend.
No, I'm just saying right now, if you look at Tony Parker and, you look at their backup point guard, they're struggling to even stay on the same planet.
I agree.
With Westbrook.
Yep.
So I'm just saying maybe 5 minutes here, 4 minutes there.
To bother Westbrook.
They just try to bother Westbrook. They need to. If Westbrook gets 40, 10, and 5 again,
it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. So,
okay, real quick, I made this point to Stephen A. yesterday. Being totally objective, I step back and I say, just in a vacuum, if I pick the 3 best players on the combined rosters, I'm going to pick Westbrook, Durant, and Ibaka. Right? So can we say that the Thunder have the 3 best players in this series? Is that fair?
Well, again, right now,
maybe you can make a case for team over here with the Spurs.
But that's how the Spurs have to win. It's kind of what Stephen A. Smith was saying earlier. The Spurs, when they're playing their best basketball, they're functioning as a team. They have 5 guys on the string defensively. You see ball movement, player movement. You see 4 or 5 guys, sometimes 6 guys in double figures. That's Spurs basketball. Spurs basketball is not just Tony Parker trying to outplay Westbrook or Duncan trying to outplay Ibaka. They're a consummate team. When they're playing their best basketball, they have, 25 assists, but they got to do a better job of attacking Ibaka and not allowing him to be such a factor to neutralize their team and pretty much extinguish.
They got to figure that out.
Yeah, everything that they're doing offensively.
All right. Well, you gave Skip maybe a little bit of hope. I'm not doing it.
I feel a little better.
He does that.
And you know what? Your suits game have picked up. And look at your shirts. Stephen A. says having an impact on you.
Yeah, that's not true. That is not.
Coach Avery Johnson, always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me.
The Heat can reach their 4th straight NBA Finals when they face the Pacers in Game 5 tonight. Miami is 7-0 in Game 5 when holding a 3-1 series lead in the Big 3 era. So, Stephen A., Miami eliminate Indiana tonight.
Well, it certainly appears that way with all the friction, the pointing of fingers, the dissension that seems to be going on in Indiana's locker room. But I don't think so. I think that Miami will not bring its A game tonight. I think Indiana will be better than they've been the last 2 games. I think they'll escape with the victory in Game 5 before losing in Game 6 back in Miami.
I think we'll see the first close game in either conference finals. And we don't know yet about Ray Allen and whether Birdman will play. Both are a little iffy. But I still think, Stephen A., Miami will close it out tonight. A very close game. I'm going to go 95-93 visiting team Heat tonight. It's over. Heat into the NBA Finals.
Stephen A.,
I got Indiana 89-85.
89-85,
Indiana.
All right, good. I'm bringing it down for you. Mark, Stephen A. says that it's going to go 6. You say 5. Gentlemen, we are closing our show, but before we do, I just want to take a brief moment. We use our words a lot on this show. We love words. They affect and they affect. And today we lost a wonderful poet by the name of Dr. Maya Angelou. Her words have inspired me, if not all of us here. And I just wanted to take a moment out just to celebrate her life. We love her. We will miss her. Rest in peace, Dr. Maya Angelou. Our show is done. For Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, I'm Carrie Champion. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can catch First Take Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2.